Welcome back to Edgework here on the Hammer Betting Network, a daily live NHL show Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Today is Tuesday, April 11th, and as you can see here, So Money already bringing up Matt is back. Let's see if he becomes an Oiler here today. Connor saying the return. Yes, yeah, that was a lock. There's no such thing in sports betting as a lock, but one thing that is So Money coming into the chat and being the first person to bring up the Edmonton Oilers on a daily basis. So that's the closest you can get. But Matt's 2 weeks away. You come back. You release a statement yesterday that was put out on the Edgework Twitter account. How's it feel to be back?
Great. I just hope upon hope that somebody out there called David Falk's number from an agency 25 years old. For those who don't know, that is the press release for Michael Jordan's return. I think actually closer to 30 years ago now, right? Because that would have been his first unretirement. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if FAME, F-A-M-E, which is an amazing acronym for one's talent agency, I don't know if that still exists. I hope it does. I hope that phone number is in order, and I hope people were calling for more information on my return after what was being called a retirement at one point, which again probably because of me putting out that quasi press release. I like having the font being just slightly off, being the hint that no, anybody under 25, this is not actually a real statement. But yeah, man, excited for this. Honestly excited for the playoffs. I would have thought on a Tuesday before the playoffs started that we'd have more than one playoff matchup kind of lined up. Like I'm sitting here like just, guns holstered, ready to start firing off, numbers in the spreadsheet. Spreadsheet's empty right now, basically, outside of Leafs and Lightning stuff. I'm like, can we come up? Give me one more matchup. Give me something to work with here. Mainly because I don't want to have to do 5 series previews on Friday for the score. So, just excited all around. Maybe not necessarily for tonight's slate, but yeah, lots to talk about nonetheless.
Yeah, and Matt, you'll be happy to know that one of the guy who's joining us here today in replacement of Todd is the man who's holding on to a Dave Taxstall Coach of the Year ticket as well there. So you got that. You guys got that in common today.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that one's going in the trash with the rest of them. But did get a fantastic number on that, so I felt good about that. But unfortunately, it does not matter at all.
No, yeah, it's just another good bet that goes to die.
Yep.
Yes. All right, well, hopefully we don't have too many of those here tonight as we go through another packed schedule here on Tuesday night. We go Monday and Tuesday back-to-back with busy schedules here in the NHL. We'll go through all of these, break down every game for tonight. If we have best bets, we will give them out, track them here on our BetStamp account, and then at the end of the show, we'll go back through and recap all the picks that were given out, the unit sizes that were bet, as well as the prices that we bet them at. So we'll go through those all at the very end of the show as we go through. And if you do want to track all the picks that we've given out throughout the course of this season, as well as the futures, our record, our wins, the CLV that we've got, you can go and find that in the BetStamp app. You can find that in iOS and Android. And one thing that you will see throughout the course of the day here is there's going to be times we pull up the BetStamp screen for different games, and you're going to see varying odds. And we feel like the easiest way to improve as a sports bettor is by using multiple sports books and always getting the best odds. We recommend using an odds comparison tool like BetStamp to do so. BetStamp compares odds across every sports book for games, futures, and player props. You can save time and money by checking BetStamp before you bet. Download the app today in iOS and Android. You can also sign up over on web. If you are looking to sign up for a new sportsbook account, a book that you see here today that you don't have, make sure to check out the offers available at betstamp.app/edgework or hit the link in the description. It is listed there. It is also pinned to the top of the live chat. And if you sign up through this page, it helps support the show. But we'll get into all the games here today, break them all down, give our picks, opinions, anything like that. And if you guys have any questions, make sure to fire them away in the chat. But Russ, before we get into the games, real quick, so money here. See what Russ is doing.
That's why I had to break it out today. It's a huge game. I knew he would be in the chat. I had to wear the Stanley Cup champions shirt just to remind him. But yeah, no, that would be an awesome game tonight. I'm pumped about it. I knew he would be in the chat about it. I knew somebody would be chirping about it, though.
Just give him a little jab to start the show. It's a good way to go about it. Just the subtle shirt, Stanley Cup champions for the Colorado Avalanche. But let's get into a team that you are already holding futures on here, Russ. If you didn't see already, if people are watching, we put out a video last week on Friday with Russ talking about some New Jersey Devils futures that he had, some strategy for going forward with that as we enter the playoffs here. But New Jersey is a team that is firmly in a playoff spot as they currently sit second in the Metro right now, points up on the Rangers, a point back of the Carolina Hurricanes. But looking over at the Buffalo Sabres, the team that's in town tonight, Buffalo still has a shot to get in the playoffs. This team is yet to have the little E for eliminated pop up next to them in their ESPN standings right now. 3 points back of Pitt. They've got a game in hand, 4 points back of the Islanders, 2 games in hand on them, as well as 5 points back of the Florida Panthers, 2 games in hand there. Now 3 games remaining for the Sabres. You just beat the Rangers in a shootout last night. You got to win out to have a chance. Tonight, looking at their odds, plus 188 in New Jersey, taking on the Devils. Russ, we'll start here with you. If you're looking at this game, is this a little long for the Sabres? Is it probably about where it should be? And is there any way you'd have any interest in having a play in this game?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, you said a couple of things there I want to touch on. Overnight, this was closer to minus 170-ish, and I thought that was a little bit long. I was thinking, right around minus 160 or minus 155, I'd probably get involved with the Devils. And then woke up this morning and it just completely got bet into. So I do think this number is a little bit long, especially this Buffalo team with their backs against the rope, just clawing and fighting with everything they have left. You saw that game last night against the Rangers, just barely eked one out in the end just to keep their playoff hopes alive. So, originally kind of was looking at playing the Devils here. I do think they have the edge just as far as matchups go. Buffalo's really, really bad at defense, and the Devils are one of the highest scoring teams in the league and, generate a lot of scoring chances. So I was certainly looking at the Devils. I think the matchup favors them. When I saw the line move all the way to minus 220 or 215, there's no way I'm going to get involved with that game. I think that if you're looking at the side on that the Buffalo Sabres is probably the right side. But no, we are looking at a player prop in this one, and it's a similar one if you watched the show before. We are going back to Dawson Mercer, over 1.5 shots on goal. This is, fairly simple. You could go back and watch last week's take on this. He was playing, I believe they were playing the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they just completely dominated them and ended up getting this in the second period, I think. This is fairly straightforward, man. This should probably closer to 2.5 shots on goal. It keeps sitting there at 1.5. For a couple of different reasons. I think odds makers saw, this last game he played against the Bruins and only had 1 shot on goal. The Bruins are one of the best defensive teams in the league, 4th in I'm sorry here. Fourth in expected goals against. The Bruins team is good. So now we're playing a Buffalo Sabres team that is completely opposite. Has no defense at all. They have one good goalie, but I don't think he's starting tonight. So we'll probably see UPL in goal here. But yeah, they're 28th in scoring chances allowed in their last 10 games. And they give up the 28th most points to right wingers here. And Dawson Mercer's playing on that front line again with Tartar and Hershiser. And I mean, he just plays really, really well, and he generates a lot of chances when he plays on that front line. So I just think this number is a little bit too low. We played minus 185 last game on over 1.5, got there fairly easily. Odds makers decided to bump this down for whatever reason against this Buffalo team that just allows a ton of shots. So that's the way I'm going again. Dawson Mercer over 1.5 goals. I'll eat the juice, and I'll take that every time on a price that I think is a little bit low.
This is just an absolute civil war crime. 10 minutes in, less than 10 minutes in, the first game and a game involving the New Jersey Devils. And Russ walks into Todd's block on a Tuesday.
No, he would be
firing off shots on.
Toddy would be happy with. Toddy would be happy with that play. I know that he would endorse that play for sure.
He would absolutely. I shouldn't put words in his mouth, but he would endorse that. But just an unbelievably brazen move by Russ to just walk in and just kick Todd to the curb and just be like, "This is my house now." Unbelievable move. We are off to a flying start.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that earlier, especially with his Devils team and everything. But I do think he would like that play. I do think he would like it. He would agree with me, I think.
Yeah. If you had hit an under or the opponent or something along those lines, we might have had to. I might have had to shut this whole thing down just to defend my guy Todd. But yeah, I'll let this one slide. I'm right there with Russ as far as the Devils are concerned. Or actually, I'm probably a little bit more aggressively into the Devils, sort of conceptually here. My fare on them is minus 217, so I bet it. Again, conceptually around minus 210. We are, at around, in some cases beyond there, depending on how you look. Obviously, minus 200, kind of the best price on the board. Minus 170 from last night. Certainly very interesting there. Don't want to sort of, spoiler alert this or whatever, but, obviously they're in a battle with Carolina right now. And Carolina, very similar situation where they're at home around a minus 200 or more favorite. Just saying, if you wanted to, I'm never sort of parlay guy, but a Devils Canes parlay pays about even money tonight. So let's just sort of put that out there. If we're kind of going by the whole like motivation, got to win, yada, 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 which has been sort of my theme over the past, few days, certainly, but as it pertains to the rest of the week, even looking at last night, like I'm going up and down the board from last night's games and looking at some of the pricing, and there seems to be a pretty clear 10% implied win probability boost on teams that quote unquote need to win the game. Now, does that mean you have to fade them? Does it mean you have to bet them? Whatever. Listen, if you think there's a 15% chance, better percent chance because of the motivation that they need to win the game, I guess that's a handicap that you could use to back those teams at theoretically bad prices. But, up and down the board here, the Islanders price last night, they were like minus 150, minus 160 on the road against Washington. There's no way that's the price any other time, right? Like that's a ludicrous price. And that's easy to say that retrospect because the Caps won that game and did so handily. But even the ones that end up losing, you've got, listen, we'll talk about the Blackhawks here and some of these bad teams that we see some of these prices on tonight that are absolutely outrageous. But it seems to me, be about a 10% tax for betting on a team that absolutely needs to win. Of course, when it comes to this Sabres-Devils game, they both sort of theoretically have, motivation. Is it 10% for each side? Obviously not. Is there a 2%, more because the Sabres are fighting for their life and the Devils are fighting for a, division title? That's where we get into sort of weird territory here. But, with these prices in this last week, like there are some wild stuff out there. But, we'll talk about some of these other teams that are fighting for the worst record in the league. So how do you even, sort of bet any of this stuff? But, the Devils and Canes sort of jumped out as an interesting parlay to get something down to an even money bet.
Well, there you go. First bet of the night locked in at the over 1.5. Dawson Mercer minus 165 for over 1.5 shots on goal for him. And again, we will recap all of these at the very end of the show, so you can stay tuned for that. But Matt, you kind of talked about teams that are trying to get the worst records in the NHL right now. Well, one of them, we're going to see a battle of two of them here tonight, but one of them has been actively going for it over the last 10 games or so. 7-game losing streak coming into this one for the Philadelphia Flyers at home tonight against the Columbus Blue Jackets, who just gave up the title of worst team in the NHL as Chicago loses last night, and Columbus jumps ahead of them and loses that battle a little bit as we get closer and closer to the final sweepstakes for Bedard. Now, looking here tonight at the odds of this one, Philadelphia at home. We're talking about teams. We usually talk about teams that are, this team sucks, we're going to back them here, especially on these Tuesday shows. But tonight with the prices in this one, with Philly, minus 172, best price available tonight against Columbus. What do you make of these odds and how it got to this point in terms of Philly being favored minus 172 against Columbus, even coming into this one on a 7-game losing streak?
Yeah, it's funny, right? You've got, as you mentioned, the Flyers lately. You've got the Blackhawks and the Ducks who have 2 points each in their last 10 games. Like we are loud quitting on the season for a lot of these teams, right? And like the Blue Jackets here with a 3-6-1 record in their last 10. That's excellent work from the Blue Jackets compared to some of these other teams, right? This is some hard-driving Blue Jackets hockey for 7 full points in their last 10 games. And we're talking about a plus money price here. I suppose you'd have to lean that way. I don't have any sort of edge in this game whatsoever. This is fairly priced to me. It would matter who ends up starting in net for the Flyers. I don't know if we have any news in that, but fundamentally, as for those sort of betting nerds out there, a little shameless plug here for a piece I wrote for The Score yesterday. The Flyers are one of 5 teams who haven't had their regular season point total settled just yet. There are 5 teams still out there who haven't clinched the under or clinched their over in the regular season point totals. Of course, they need, I think it's 3 points here in their last 2 games, but of course they are playing the Blue Jackets, and I believe the Blackhawks are their last 2. So for those out there who might have gotten in one way or another on a fade or a backing of the Flyers, you probably have enough of a sweat, not thinking that, let's say, you bet the under on the Flyers, so I don't think really, anybody thought it was going to do that great this year. Now you're sitting there going like, how are we minus 175-ish favorites in our last 2 games when we just need this crappy team to lose more games? Somehow they have even crappier teams to face in these last 2 games. So honestly, that's, the closest thing to interesting I can find here for the Flyers. And of course, if you retroactively want to bet the under on the Flyers season point total, you have an opportunity to do so in the form of a game-to-game bet here with the Blue Jackets at a considerably better price.
Right. Russ, is there anything for you or any way you would look about going into the Tortorella Bowl, as MH Albany says here in the chat?
Yeah, I think that just to answer your initial question, how does the price get to this minus 170 on 2 bottom 6 teams? Is I think the Flyers have actually been playing a lot better than their stats show and their record shows. And especially tonight, it seems like they're going to get Carter Hart back in goal. I was really considering a play on the Flyers here as just a nasty home favorite in a regulation play. But there's just too many variables, and there's too many other places I want to go to put my money. But yeah, when you look at this Columbus Jackets team, they're just absolutely awful. They've allowed 52 goals in their last 10 games. They're actively, they're just not playing any defense at all. This Flyers team actually has been in a number of their recent games. They just, for some reason, struggle in the third period or just get terrible goaltending between Urson and Felix Sandstrom. Now they're actually getting Carter Hart back in goal, who actually does, care a little bit, it seems like. So that's certainly the way I would look. I actually have Philly as about 24th in my power rankings. And the Jackets are down there at 30th. And, one of the worst teams in the league, the worst 3 teams in the league, have no desire to win at all. So the only way I would look is the Flyers here. I do think they will win, but it seems like it's already priced fairly evenly, and it should be about 175. So I think that's about right on market. So there'll be no play for me here, but the line does make sense to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
as sort of to jump on that, I have the Flyers in general. Again, this is Carter Hart in net, which is goalie stabilization. I have Flyers only 5% below average in the league, which
Sure.
is probably right around where Bill has them relative to his
Sure.
his rankings there.
Mhm.
And I have the Blue Jackets like a full 24% below league average, right? So there's
Yep.
a pretty significant gap. Even though we're talking about the sort of below water teams here in the NHL, there is a pretty significant gap of what they're actually doing on the ice on a game-to-game basis. And just because the Flyers have had this run of bad luck or sneaking out losses to get themselves in the mix, and the Blue Jackets are even somehow failing at losing games down the stretch relative to some of these other teams. Doesn't mean just because these two teams are bad that it's necessarily a coin flip game. And the Blue Jackets probably should start. Luckily for the Blue Jackets, they can still salvage their draft position if they lose these last couple of games here. So we'll see if they put that into effort tonight.
All right, moving on to the next game. As we had nothing there in that one. This one, Toronto at Tampa here tonight. Toronto coming off a back-to-back, having just played in Florida last night. We saw the whole situation where they tried to do an emergency recall of a goaltender. Were denied that. I completely understand why that was denied, especially in terms of they put themselves in that situation, signing the contract the day before to max everything out. But that is where they're going to be over the next 3 games, or 2 games, excuse me, including last night's game. Is the amateur tryout goalie going to be signed likely each day as it goes along to close out the rest of the regular season. So in terms of that, we don't really know what we're going to get. Likely not going to try to play Samsonov on a back-to-back, but you're going to end up a little jammed up. So what do you do there? And then all these guys now potentially resting with having seen some injury scares. Don't know too much about what you'll get out of Toronto. This is obviously a first-round preview here between these two teams. What we will see starting round 1, as Matt mentioned, is so the only one that's locked in here. Russ, if you're looking at this game, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of lines, who will play, who won't play, what the goaltending could be for either team, or the guys sitting out or playing for either team here tonight. How do you kind of go about handicapping this one? And would you say that the prices that it's at right now, in terms of minus 139 for Tampa being favored at home tonight, is fair?
Just like you said, man, this is such a tough game to call because it's so hard to judge who is playing, and there's so many different variables. Just looking at it on the surface level, if we did have full lineups for both these teams and we had Samsonov in goal versus Vasilevsky, I would certainly lean towards the Leafs here and would love to play them at this price. With that being said, off of a back-to-back, not sure who we will get in net. Probably more likely that the Leafs rest some players than Tampa Bay here. And Tampa Bay maybe uses this as more of a get right spot just because they've been playing so poorly. But there's so many different variables and so many question marks here that I will pass on the side and the total for now. I do have a player prop lined up, and it's going to be a little bit dependent on the lineups, but I do think I think this one's solid, and I think that he will be in goal. And I'm sure, Zach, you can maybe help me out with this if you think, if you think he might take the night off. But the way I'm looking here is Michael Bunting over 2.5 shots on goal. This is still at a plus money price. I think, that's extremely generous. Yeah, plus 110, plus 108 is fine. Completely fine. Honestly, this probably should be flipped. The juice should be flipped. It should probably be minus 130 or so on the over. Mikey B has just been playing awesome recently. He's been playing on that front line and has gone over this total in 5 games. And 6 of the last 7 games, he's been over this total. And it hasn't been particularly close. He's putting 5 shots on goal, every other night or so. And, this is a team. It's kind of weird to say it, but he's playing against a Lightning team that's just giving up a ton of chances recently. They are their defense is just very, very poor. 27th in expected goals allowed the last 10 games, and 27th in scoring chances allowed. I'm not sure what the deal is with this Lightning team, but they don't have long to figure it out before getting into a series against a team that is actually getting right back on track in this Leafs team. They've been playing a lot better recently. So this is a similar play to the Devils angle for me, where I like the Devils in that game. So but I didn't know how I wanted to attack it. Same here. I like the Leafs in this game. If they had their starting lineups, weren't playing on a back-to-back, that's the way I would go. But, I think you can attack it this way and get that Mikey B over 2.5 or over 2.5 shots on goal. All we need is 3 at a plus money. That's the way I'm going to go. Even if Lightning sneak one out, you can still get a win on the prop. So that's the way I'm going. That angle's been working out well for me. So hopefully we get there.
I love that Russ
I do think he will play, by the way.
Go ahead, Zach.
I just wanted to say that quickly because Russ was saying that. I think it would be very, 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 very unlikely that of all people, wouldn't play. Yeah.
Great.
I think his line mates potentially could see limited minutes or not play tonight, but him particularly, I think it would be very unlikely he doesn't play. Sorry.
Okay,
Matt,
cool.
Go ahead.
No, I just love that Russ is focusing on a guy named Bunting in the home of the 10-0 Rays. That's really on brand for what they've got going on lately. But you bring up the point. Yeah, if they weren't on a back-to-back, if they had a full lineup, and I think that's what this number is sort of telling you. That those things obviously exist. Obviously, the back-to-back certainly, but I also think when it comes to full lineup, maybe trying some different things. And having won last night for the Leafs, there that might be kind of their last playoff tune-up, right? Where these next couple of games, maybe you're putting different guys on the power play, maybe you're giving extra minutes to guys in the bottom half, et cetera, et cetera. So while my fair price to bet the Lightning would be what I'd be looking for is -130. My fair price around -136, and we're looking at we're not getting that price. There is sort of an inherent or intrinsic sort of element here where I think the Lightning, as you mentioned, have more stuff to work on, honestly, before the playoffs, because they haven't played particularly well. And it seems like I'm not super locked in on what's going on with the Lightning on the regular basis, certainly not over the last couple of weeks, but it certainly seems like the coach is not all that psyched with how they've been playing over the last, couple of months or even a couple of weeks. And so this is a game where I think the Lightning care more maybe about this game and about sort of, you want to do the sending messages or whatever for a series that's going to start next week. I think it helps in that department that the Lightning are playing at home. If the Leafs are playing at home, maybe the care levels would be a little bit higher. But again, having won that game against another potential playoff team last night, I think there's a very real possibility. Like, why would you put all your guys out for max minutes in the second game of back-to-back, risking potential injury, all of that stuff, right? Like, imagine the heat that they would end up taking if something happened under that circumstance. So I think just sort of inherently, this might be a spot where the Lightning win and maybe win big and maybe get people a little bit worried here in Toronto. Not that they're not always worried once the weather gets a little bit warmer here, as Zach and I discussed before going live here. So I like the Lightning here, even though I can't necessarily make that case from a purely number standpoint. I just think there's probably more that goes into this game than just, is reflected in my kind of routine, like 5% less because it's a back-to-back and, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, while my price says, something in the -130s, -140s is actually probably a pretty good bet, I think, here on the Lightning.
Yep, I agree.
Do you want to lock that in here, Matt?
Let's do it, man.
All right.
Yeah, what's the best price we get? -140?
-139.
Oh, yeah, 139 I'm fine
best
with.
price available. So
no, I think that's a good angle. And Matt said some really smart things there. And it's so much more likely. It's so much more likely that the Leafs kind of hide some things, right? Going into this playoff series. It's like, why would the Leafs show their A game, show everything they wanted? Yeah. Whereas on the flip side, it's like this Lightning team kind of trying to get right, trying to figure some things out. So I completely agree. I think that was well said.
Yeah, the one thing for this game for me, especially like following it the way I do, is I genuinely have zero idea what goes on with goaltending tonight.
Yeah.
Somebody joked about, he said, Sammy never breaks. That was a quote that was said the other day by Samsonov when he was asked about getting injured. And he said oh, Sammy never breaks, which I thought was a great quote. But still, I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, do we want to be running this guy Monday, Tuesday, Thursday ahead of the playoffs? Probably not, but the other option is a kid on an ATO. So okay, what happens here? That's the one is very up in the air for me.
And if that's a possibility, the way that we think it might be, and all of the other stuff we mentioned with regards to the lineup is I hate to say it, but are alt spreads here a thing that we should be just kind of speculating on? If we think the price is fair or pretty close to fair for a an evenly matched, kind of roster situation. Again, it's way more valuable to give, your guy Sammy a day off than it is to like take a 10-1 beatdown, or 10-1 obviously is an exaggeration, but like a 5-1 type of a beatdown when the team gets rolling. And like we didn't even mention, by the way, like the last three scores for Tampa Bay here, right? 6-3 loss, 6-1 loss, and a 7-4 loss to Ottawa. Like, if you're going to have a team that like needs to like get it going here, like this is that team. And again, this might be that spot to sort of show something. So maybe a -1.5, maybe a -2.5 is worth the play here. But I'm certainly fine with the money line at -140.
Okay, so lock in the money line, but anyone out there, if you want a little bit more on this one, definitely go take a look at some of those alt line prices or the puck line prices, even just regular -1.5 on there. But moving on, another game here tonight with a team that actually has some importance here with this one, trying to continue to get together as many points as they possibly can with the New Jersey Devils chasing behind them. That is the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina currently first in the Metro, a point up on New Jersey, 2 points up on the Rangers. Coming into this one, though, on a 3-game losing streak, which has allowed New Jersey and the Rangers to kind of gain a little bit of ground on them here. So if Carolina wants to remain first in the Metro and control their own destiny in terms of who they're going to play with a wild card team down there, points towards the end of the season are going to continue to be extremely important. And a game here tonight against the Detroit Red Wings presents that opportunity to Carolina. Now, sitting at -255, Matt, would this be something you would have any interest in touching, or maybe we go revert to the normal Tuesday show and say, oh yeah, this Detroit team's not very good, we're going to back them tonight?
First of all, I don't know that we characterize my bets as saying they're not very good. I think we'll back them. That's more for Alex Moretto.
Not you. That's okay. As a whole, yes.
As a whole,
all encompassing.
So I just wanted to clear that up. No, I think we've got a sort of a fair price on Carolina. Obviously, the one caveat here, and this is something that I'm going to address whenever they get a matchup. Their matchup settled for the playoffs here, is what's happened to their rating, or what should be happening to their rating post Svechnikov, right? And it seems like right now their conversion rates aren't very good with him out of the lineup. Now, again, might be small sample size. We'll never know, right? Because by the time we know, they'll either have like made a run in the playoffs or have a relatively quick exit. So I can only kind of go with the amalgamation of the entire season here so far, and I think this is a pretty fair price on Carolina because they are the highest rated team in my ratings. Right? It's not Boston, it actually is Carolina. And so when I talked earlier about like the Devils and Carolina kind of being in the same situation, looking at each other on the scoreboard, games starting around the same time, why not throw those two together to get an even money sort of parlay here? Only risk a unit on the idea that the Devils are a fair price and that the Hurricanes are a fair price, rather than sort of almost, laying almost 3 units to win 1 here on the Hurricanes. So that's just basically how I would play this game to sort of minimize the damage, so to speak.
All right, fair enough. And Russ, would there be any way for you to go about this one? Nothing in Detroit, Carolina tonight.
No, not necessarily. As far as for my Devils futures, I hope that Carolina keeps losing.
I was gonna say.
From a market perspective, I actually think this number's a little bit long on Carolina. I'm not sure that they should be laying a price like that. I did think I do have in my notes the Svechnikov injury is huge, and they are, since he went down, the last 15 games are 7-7-1 with a -3 goal differential 5-on-5. So I think this is a massive, massive thing. This is definitely, Carolina is one of the best defensive teams in the league, but as we've talked about multiple times on this show, they just don't generate enough. And on the flip side of the puck, Detroit is really, really bad at defense, but they're decent on offense. And so I think this is kind of a dangerous matchup here for the Hurricanes. And I think this Red Wings team might be semi-live, just kind of fighting away, end up being a 2-2 game in the third period and be able to eke one out. But there are questions in goal here with, if you've got Magnus Hellberg going for the Red Wings, and I think they'll probably go with Ranta for the Hurricanes. So there's a little bit of questions, but generally speaking, I do think this line's a little bit long. To lay 275, 290 on the Hurricanes, I think is a little bit too much, but I won't have a player.
All right. Another game with some variables here, and that would be the Boston Bruins at home against Washington tonight. Now, we talk about Washington having played last night coming into this one on a back-to-back here, but the Bruins have been sitting guys out as they go down the stretch, resting guys in their final few games, making sure guys stay healthy, stay fresh, whatever it is. They obviously have the NHL record for wins in a season. They can block that up on the weekend, so at this point, they've basically done all that they have any type of interest to do for this regular season. Like that, the final thing has happened, the final thing to knock off, and now here on out, it is kind of, let's just get to the playoffs. Obviously, this team has just continued their dominance and their consistency all season long. 6-game win streak even coming into this one. They are 9-1 in their last 10, like minus 275 tonight against Washington, but Russ, with some of these variables, with some of the speculation, maybe, hey, will they sit guys out? Is this a spot where maybe you could potentially look at backing Washington at plus 244 here against the Bruins, or would this kind of be stay away? Like, where would you kind of go with this one, even considering Washington is coming into this on a back-to-back?
Yeah, I think, that game that Washington played last night was just massive for them. And I'm not sure what type of motivation they had, if they wanted a little bit higher chance to get Bedard. I saw that increased their lottery odds a little bit, but I'm not sure what got into that Caps team last night. But no, I think something needs to be said about this number and about late in the year and some of these teams resting guys, right? If it does come out that Boston is resting all these guys and it ends up that, they drop to minus 200 or so, I think that you can get a lot of value by sort of playing against this line move, right? This is exactly what we did 2 nights ago, and the Bruins were playing the Flyers in Philadelphia. They announced everyone was out, basically. Marchand, the entire first line for the Bruins was completely out. Taylor Hall was out. Multiple people was out. The line dropped to like minus 190. We actually ended up playing the Bruins in regulation at minus 135, minus 140 against Felix Sandstrom. It's just absolutely the most insane line that I've seen all year. Right. So we absolutely hammered it. They ended up winning 5-3. It wasn't particularly close in the third period. And I think that's just a good example of, some of these odds makers moving these lines too much this late in the year. You still have one of the best teams with still playing with motivation to get these records in the end of the year. Like, this team does not want to lose. They're not used to losing. They don't know how to lose.
Yeah.
It's like they can try to lose, or they can play one of their mediocre games and they still end up winning, especially against a team like the Caps and Charlie Lindgren in goal on a back-to-back. So that's something that I think, should be monitored and I think should be touched on. And, even for people listening, it's like, if they over adjust some of these massive teams to some of these players, there could be value on the other side. Like I just said, if they drop a lot of these Boston players and they don't play them tonight and that line goes all the way down to minus 210, I'll probably be on the Boston in regulation here, just because I think that line is just a little bit too short. And, there's value just because this team's a lot better. Even the backup players are better than this Caps team. So I think that needs to be said. I won't have a play here, but that's certainly the way I've been looking the last week or so.
Yeah, and it goes back to a lot of the things that we talk about, certainly on Tuesdays, where, my kind of stance is, like, a lot of the time we just overvalue every player in the league and what they mean on a one-game basis, right? And when this guy's out or this guy's out, it's like, oh, I can't bet on that team because this guy's out. It's like, no, because we just have to wait for the market to change, and they're probably going to, over exaggerate what that is, because, especially steam chasing and whatnot, like, you're going to see a 5-cent move become a 10-cent move because of that 5-cent move, right? And people are going to like jump on that 5-cent move. And worth mentioning, right, that this is Boston's final regular season home game. And this is obviously a team that's been great at home. And so when we're talking about a team that, the Lightning are another good example, or sort of the Lightning of the last few years are another good example, where they're just plugging in guys in the bottom 6. And those are the guys who are winning them series, right? I don't have to tell Zach about the bottom 6 of the Lightning from the playoffs last year, because this is, again, we don't see it because it isn't, a name on the back of a jersey. But these teams that have, again, people use the word culture or whatever, or system, or however you want to sort of put it. Like, a lot of these guys can be plugged in and play. There are a lot of really good hockey players out there. And when you have a good team and a good organization, Lightning, Boston, et cetera, et cetera. Like those guys who are going to get plugged in are probably going to play pretty well. That's just sort of how they have been bred in that organization. You throw in the fact that, again, this is the last regular season home game of the year. These guys are going to be well motivated, and certainly, again, I'm right there with Russ. I hope that the entire first line is out for Boston. Like, it isn't just an if, I'm like hoping that that's the case and this number crashes in the same way, because I'll take Boston, right? Absolutely. Especially Washington on a back-to-back. We get into this spot where Washington got a win last night, as you mentioned. Like, you don't know what got into them. Probably a late season home game, right? Against a team that they play pretty frequently in the Islanders. Now this game means considerably less at this point in the season for them.
Right. All right, so no play there as ahead of the game in that Boston game, but look for potentially having some lineup announcements and then maybe being able to play back the other way. That's one thing as well. If you were betting on NBA this year, you would notice the trend of star players being announced out and fading the line movement after it's gone the other way, waiting and playing back on that team who now announces that the injury is out. You would have been more profitable than you would have been playing injury news so far this season in the NBA, at least. But to move on to the next game, one line that has been my favorite over the last couple of weeks, and it was stolen from Alex B. Smith here on the Edgework Show. Must win does not mean will win. And this tonight is a must-win game for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it is an optimal spot to do so here against the Chicago Blackhawks. And now talking about crazy prices for teams you don't necessarily trust here, minus 476 best price available on the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that is best price by a lot too. If you're looking around, you can find that on the Canby books for anybody out there, and everyone else is basically slotting in minus 500. You're seeing minus 520, minus 526 here on Pinnacle. This is getting a little out of hand for the Penguins. Obviously, this is a spot they must win to have any hopes at the playoffs. Chicago stinks. They just just moved themselves into worst team in the NHL, but these guys are still in the NHL. These are some unpredictable teams. Russ, how do you even begin to evaluate this and the line that we're seeing on this game tonight?
That's a good question. I mean, I begin just like every other game. I begin by updating this Blackhawks lineup and just wondering who the hell some of these players are for this team. And it's like, that's a good way to go about it. And that's where like a players based model is so helpful, because you can just tell when a team is just trying to work in new guys / trying to absolutely not win. And I mean, there's not much, there's nowhere that we could have played on this team in the last month or so and had value or been profitable over the long term. And I mean, this is similar here. We talked about it. I think Todd and I talked about it last week when the Flames were minus 450 and the Blackhawks actually ended up winning that game. So I have no clue where to go about this, man. It's like this Pittsburgh team, I'm higher than them than most. I do like this team. They struggle on defense, but I like their forwards. I like the way they generate. But, this is minus 550. This is absolutely insane. The only thing I can say is that the price is a little bit too long. It's juiced way up. They know they're not going to get any bets on the Blackhawks. But, I don't want to back this Blackhawks team who's just trotting out some no-name players, kids that have never ever seen, actual NHL hockey game. So, actively trying to lose so they can get, tank for Bedard. So this is a pass for me. There's really not much I could say.
Yeah, the loud quitting of the Blackhawks. Zach, so let's just kind of dumb this down for a second, right? Because sometimes we have to get dumber before we get smarter here. Like, what chance do you give the Blackhawks to win this game tonight? Like, out of a percentage probability here.
Yeah, well, I will say I looked at the probability of this one, the implied probability of this game of what it is right now. I don't know, because I think that some of it is we're unclear on what the lineup is and who these guys even are. So some of that is confusing to me, but I'd say like this should be like a 10% chance maybe of the Hawks winning this one. Like, I don't even know if that's. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point too, where you got you look at both sides, and again, logically, you kind of work through it, and you're like, I don't know, 90% chance that the Penguins win this game.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, I see why we opened, in the -4s, and now we're rocketing through the -5s here.
Yeah.
But you also know logically that this is a hockey game where guys on the Blackhawks, even if we don't know their names, are going to try their hardest, right? And I'll see Alex's line, and I'll raise them the one that everybody uses in the NFL, right? And when it comes to week 18, week 17, if you're in a must-win game, you must not be very good, right? And so the Penguins, as much as the jerseys on the back, the numbers and the names on the back of their jerseys, they've still gotten themselves into this position. And yeah, I was an idiot, and I went and got married last week like an idiot, and we missed out on the Blackhawks being able that money line against the Flames. So I said the exact same thing that I am this week, and it's out of obligation against these, again, mediocre teams that we want to give more credit to because of history and name recognition and brand value and all of that sort of thing, in the Flames and the Penguins just aren't that good, right? They are just not that good this season. And yeah, this edition of the Blackhawks is never going to be sort of fairly priced, because my fair price here, if this game was February and sort of a more standard lineup for both teams, is about 70% for the Penguins. And this, a -500 suggests 83%, right? And so, yeah, there's that 10% that I started the show off talking about, the tax that you're having to pay to back the team that quote unquote needs to win the game, must win the game. That's where that exists here. But again, we're probably going to lose, right? And we're probably going to lose if it truly is 70%, and we are right about it being 70%. We are still losing 7 out of 10 times in a fair priced bet. And so even though we're getting 13 extra percent here, we are still probably going to lose this bet 7 out of 10 times. So yeah, it's a bet that you kind of have to make, especially now that it's blown through +400. Again, I'm the last person who's interested in betting, a lot of hockey games in the last week of the regular season, but we are off the rails here on this price. And so the Penguins must-win game. They just must not be very good, or they would have clinched this thing a long time ago.
So you want to lock in here the +429? All right.
Zach,
yes.
It's our last chance, man. It's our last chance to do something stupid on a Tuesday. Right. We've certainly done well enough in the previous, what have we been doing here? 27 Tuesdays in the season here. Might as well, man. Let's go for it. +426. Why not? We got money to play.
I want to remind people too, we talked about the sports books you can sign up at and the prices and getting the best price available. Last week, Russ, we talked about that game, the Calgary game. Well, Calgary was listed at -560 on one book. So I just took a little scroll down here to see what that one particular book might be listing. -714 tonight on the Pittsburgh Penguins. So
that's sick.
So yeah, if you are in a situation here where maybe that's your book that you have is
just bet the underdogs. Yeah. You should just have that book just to bet underdogs.
Yeah, that is a little ridiculous. -714 available, but
are we even getting a good price on the underdog? That's just a massive straddle, right?
Right. Yeah, it's +415.
Like a 20% hold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's +415, so it is the second best price available on the third best price available on the underdog here available. But
yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, a game here that we're gonna jump to. I know Russ will have to get out of here shortly, so a game we'll jump to before we wrap up with the other few games on the schedule tonight. Vancouver in Anaheim taking on the Ducks here tonight. Vancouver coming off a back-to-back as well, taking on the Ducks here tonight. -147 for the Vancouver Canucks. Vancouver coming into this one 5-3-2 in their last 10. Anaheim, on the other hand, 0-8-2 in their last 10. An 11-game losing streak for the Anaheim Ducks. Russ, we'll go to you right away on this one. What are you looking at between the Ducks and Canucks in this game tonight?
The old Ducks versus Canucks. I'll have to jump off real quick, and I'll let Matt and Zach take over from here. But let me just get this last play in. We did play the Vancouver Canucks in regulation at plus money at +107, I believe. I don't normally get involved with games like this. Yeah, that +106 is great. I don't normally get involved with games like this at all. Normally kind of off the radar But this is a crazy price. I think this price is completely off. I'm not sure, and then so you kind of have to get into why this price is off and what the odds makers are looking at. And I'm not sure exactly, Vancouver's on a back-to-back. We had Colin Delia go last night. We should get Thatcher Demko in goal tonight. So, with my numbers, I have Vancouver closer to minus 190, minus 185 here. And we can go into a couple of things under the hood, but this is a fairly straightforward handicap, and it's just a numbers play for me. I think the number on the Canucks should just be a lot longer than minus 140. I'm not even sure where they get that. But yeah, let's just look at some of the numbers on this Anaheim team. 0-8-2. Recently, they've lost 16 of their last 20 games. They're 32nd in expected goals allowed, 30th in scoring chances allowed. This is one of those bottom three teams that has no desire to win. They're not even trying to win. They're not planning on winning. One of the angles that maybe worries me, or maybe that the odds makers are looking at a little bit, is this Canucks team has been starting some rookies, some younger guys on defense. They did that last night against the Kings, and actually the Canucks played fine. We were on the Kings in that game, and they ended up taking over in the third period and, deservedly got the win there. But I think the Canucks defensemen, and I think the Canucks played really well, actually. Go to the back-to-back. Maybe that's a little bit of an angle, but this Canucks team's actually very good on the back-to-back. They're 10th in the league in points played on a back-to-back. They have no issue with the travel. They have no issue. It doesn't seem like, they have any issue getting up on the road. They're a fairly good team on the road, and will get their best goalie in net tonight in Thatcher Demko. I think this guy is really, really good. He's probably one of the better players that the Canucks actually have. And they've been playing well under their new coach also. So this is fairly simple for me. I'll fade the Ducks pretty much whenever you let me. And if this price is going to be this low, I'll play against the Ducks every time. So, yep, this is Canucks in regulation at plus money. I could not believe that it was a plus money number. So I locked that in right away this morning.
All right, there you go. That is locked in. Now, Russ, we'll let you get out of here. So thank you for taking time to do this today. Appreciate you hopping on in replacement of Todd. And you do jump in here and give out some props. So that is it's a nice we get a little mix up. Matt, I don't know if you've seen, but Russ has been doing a lot more props lately. We've been pretty successful here on the Edgework Show with the props he's given out. So hopefully we continue that here tonight. But Russ, thank you very much for hopping in.
Yeah, you bet.
Matt and I will continue to close out the games. But
it sounds good. Russ. You bet. Cheers, guys. Good luck tonight. Talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. There you go. Russ hopping in here, helping us out with today's show. But Matt, we got a few more games left. I'll let you go. First of all, before we move off this game, any thoughts here tonight between the Vancouver Canucks and Anaheim Ducks? I had to throw in the first names of the team because I didn't want to go Canucks Ducks again. That's right. That last time, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were going to get a third rhyme in there, and we were going to get shut off by the internet, the people who run the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, nobody does? Oh, right. It's lawless. It's a lawless society. My mistake.
Yes.
I think I can understand a little bit more than Russ where the number comes from. I obviously agree with him in the idea that, listen, I don't know if so many still in the chat. He's probably out on a ledge somewhere after he heard so many good things about his Canucks team, despite where they are in the standings, right? And I've booked a profit on the Canucks over the last, basically the last month of the season, where I wrote about a month ago that this was a team that is going to annoy the hell out of their fans by winning a lot of games and cashing a lot of tickets, and they have. This might be a little bit of a bridge too far, but again, you have to factor in it's hard because obviously the Ducks are not. Theoretically, you look at their last 10, you go, okay, they have 2 points in the last 10, as I mentioned early on. And you go, okay, they're not trying to win. Then you look at their last 2 games and those were the 2 points. They were in overtime against Colorado a couple of games ago, right? So this isn't like they're getting housed every time and that sort of thing. And so I think that's where the pricing comes from. It's a more sort of season-long fair pricing that has been put into play maybe because of these close games that they've gone to extra time in. So I'm certainly not betting the Ducks. That is not at all what I'm saying. It's more just sort of an understanding of where the pricing comes from, which is obviously from a team rating standpoint. And, I understand why he has the Ducks rated maybe a little bit lower than the market. I understand why he has the Canucks rated higher than the market. I obviously was the same. I am probably just going to sit this one out, even though I'll probably be regretting that when the Canucks win yet another meaningless game to move themselves up the standings and further away in the Bedard sweepstakes and the lottery balls and all of that kind of thing. And the Ducks, all a part of their plan, managed to, of course, not get any points and probably end up having Connor Bedard go into obscurity in Anaheim, and we never see him again, as long as we live. So all that to say is probably a pass for me.
That's the only thing that's a little bit upsetting about the possibility of him going out there to Anaheim is that he's just going to go into the abyss and we're never going to hear about him. He's just going to be gone. All right, moving on. We have a couple games left here, including Winnipeg, Minnesota, Edmonton, Colorado, and then Seattle, Vegas. So we'll go through some of these here, but starting with the Winnipeg, Minnesota game, another important game here for Winnipeg. Obviously, Calgary now eliminated from playoff contention, but somehow, some way, the Nashville Predators continue to hang on and they have a fighting chance. Now, obviously, this is going to come down to Winnipeg basically losing out and not getting points, and Nashville winning out to finish out the season. That is the prayer that they need to get this. But looking at Winnipeg here tonight, an opportunity to pick up the points, a couple points potentially, and close this out and just wrap it up and say, all right, Nashville, you finally, this is one of those take the dog out back and, the rest is history kind of moments for the Nashville Predators, as they've just hung on all season. We all kept coming here all 5 days of the show and saying, can't believe Nashville's still in contention here to get in.
Yeah.
Like,
we announced that they stunk like 5 weeks ago. And and again, like if we're, take some things away from the season that aren't just wins and losses, like another situation where we look at, again, names that we're familiar with, quasi big names here. Oh, they missed Ryan Johansson. And it's like, I guess, right? Like, why are we valuing, and obviously there's other guys, but like, I'm just using him as sort of an example when you start piling in, like, yes, Roman Josi, a big deal, right? Philip Forsberg, is he as big of a deal now as he was, 5 years ago when they were in the Stanley Cup final? Like, probably not. And evidently not, because the Predators are somehow still alive. And so when all those guys sort of accumulate, we go like, they're without this guy, and this guy. Like, we were throwing in Tanner Jeannot in the mix, right? As if like that was some sort of thing, because it was just another name that we could say to sort of say that the Predators stink. Meanwhile, like, the Predators keep bringing up different guys, professional hockey players. And you and I have talked about it numerous times. There are a ton of good hockey players. There is not a finite limit that is, however many players there are in the NHL, and a giant drop-off. There are thousands of good hockey players looking for opportunity, and some of these guys have come in and fill in. And by the way, like, the goaltender can also be really good. So Saros ends up playing really, really awesome and picking it up, right? So sometimes the players pick it up for the goalie that we don't think is very good, and sometimes the goalie picks it up for the players that we don't think are very good, right? And that's why this is really tough, right? That's why hockey betting is really difficult. And so all that is to say, we're not even talking about the Predators in this game. I was like, I'll have to say about the Predators game. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're not even talking about that. We're talking about the Jets and the Wild, which is like, again, who's got more to play for? Obviously, the Jets technically have more to play for, but I think the Wild care about this game. I think this game is fairly priced. If you have the board up here, like, I'd be closer to the Wild here. If we can get something closer to pick them, there's a -111. Like, -111 is a price for me to bet the Wild. And I know people go like, well, the Jets must win game, all that sort of thing. Like, the Wild are trying here too. And so I think these teams are actually rated pretty evenly without home ice advantage. I actually have them dead even rated, but home ice advantage matters. Obviously the pressure element to the Jets, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Again, it must win game. They must not be very good, or they would have had this clinched a long time ago. I'll take the Wild at that -111 price.
All right, we'll lock that in. And so money here saying one day we won't have to talk about the Preds anymore.
That day is tomorrow.
One day.
Or no, it's not tomorrow, because the Wild are going to win tonight. So it's probably the last day of the regular season.
Keeping it alive. And then Jordan Mosel saying, can the Predators please just die? Nuke so much money fading this dumb team. So there you go. That's been us all year as well. We've joked about it, but it's been it's been the reality. And not just fading them though, Matt. Like, think about the times on the show that we've been like, you know what, reluctantly, like, we're backing the Predators tonight, and then the next day we're like, why did we back the Predators? Like, why did we do that last week? All right, we're going against them this week, and then it's like,
is the frustrating part the losses in fading them, or is the frustrating part the losses in backing them, right? Because it's like the reasons we had to back them, like, all turned out to be pretty valid. They just didn't happen to win those games. Like, that's to me, that's the more infuriating part in all of this.
Yeah,
for me.
well, we lock that in there. Maybe, just maybe, the Predators' hopes stay alive tonight. I'm sorry, Jordan, but maybe they stay alive, and we have to talk about them for at least one more day. But we'll see what happens here. So taking that Minnesota money line. But now here we go. This is
Here we go.
going to be So Money's. This is So Money's glory game here. A little preview potentially of what we could see come playoff time in So Money's Edmonton Oilers, as we are all Oilers here, supporting So Money here on the show, getting through the playoffs. The Edmonton Oilers on the road tonight against the Colorado Avalanche. Edmonton currently sitting second in the Pacific. They are 2 points back of Vegas. They are 3 points up on the Kings at this point, 9-1 in their last 10 coming into this, a 7-game win streak, 26-11-3 on the road. Now Colorado first in the Central. They are tied for points with Dallas, but they have a game in hand on them. They're 2 points up on the Wild, 8-2 in their last 10, now on a 5-game win streak. A battle of two titans here, if you will, Matt, coming into this game tonight, and basically priced around a coin flip. So Money asking us here in the chat, do the right thing, Matt and Zach.
That didn't sound like a question, to be honest with you.
I know. Where do you come in here tonight, pricing wise, on this Colorado Edmonton game? Is there a side that you would lean towards taking?
Yeah, do the right thing? Not a question. Okay, I have this fairly priced. I'm not going to bet the game. I'm going to absolutely hijack this segment because I assume So Money is going to hijack any potential Oilers preview series preview that you guys are going to do. I like the Oilers as much as the next guy. There should not be one red cent bet on the Edmonton Oilers to win the Stanley Cup from here until the start of the playoffs. And here's why. Bet Connor McDavid to win the Conn Smythe Trophy instead. It might end up being the difference between 10-1 and 11-1. Like, that's how tight that's, straddle, that implied win probability might be. But you should always get a better price on a singular player to win the Conn Smythe than you would the Stanley Cup champion, right, Zach? I think that's pretty fair to say, especially when there is another guy on that team named Leon Draisaitl who theoretically, conceptually could win the Conn Smythe Trophy. But Zach, you and I know how the media works in the NHL. The Stanley Cup is not getting awarded to the Edmonton Oilers without Connor McDavid getting the Conn Smythe Trophy. Leon Draisaitl could score 10 more points than Connor McDavid, which would be incredible because Connor McDavid would probably have to score 50 points in the playoffs for the Oilers to win this, right? Because you have to work backwards, right? Yeah. The assumption when you're betting a Conn Smythe Award winner is that they are going to win the Stanley Cup, right? So again, why would you're obviously not going to bet the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup if you don't think they're going to win the Stanley Cup. But if you do, you should bet on Connor McDavid to win the Conn Smythe Trophy. There is a second element to all this. Not only are you getting a better price, even if you're getting the same price, an unprecedented situation in odds making if Connor McDavid is 10-1 and the Oilers are 10-1 to win the Stanley Cup. Think about it last year. He made it through only three playoff series and was still 4 points clear of the actual Conn Smythe Trophy award winner. And there was even some buzz at the end of the third round going like, man, if there was ever a time to give a guy a playoff MVP not making the finals, it might be this guy. Now, we had a big-time head-to-head matchup that you were inevitably going to give a McKinnon, a Makar, any one of the Lightning contenders. So obviously it wasn't a real situation. But if the Oilers make the Stanley Cup finals, on the presumption that McDavid has those 50 points accrued, and they lose to any number of Eastern teams that frankly are probably better than them, who are probably deeper, who probably have way more players that have contributed to being very good and winning that Stanley Cup, it's not remotely out of the realm of possibility that McDavid still wins the Conn Smythe Trophy, having taken his team to the final, even in a losing cause. We have not seen it since 2003 with Jean-Sébastien Giguère, back in 1987 when Zach was just a twinkle in his mother's eye, and with Ron Hextall. This could happen, and I think it actually, I don't want to say probably does, because that implies a better than 50% chance, but there's certainly kind of a better than 10% chance that if they get to the final, that McDavid has a 10, 12, 15-point lead on, say, anybody on the Boston Bruins, if we're going to use sort of the favorite in the East as an example. Even anybody on, again, if hell freezes over, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who will have 3, 4, or 5 candidates. Like,
why do you got to say it like that? Why do you got to say it?
I don't know if you're rolling the eyes about how I said it or about the even just general concept of the Leafs making.
No, it's how you said it. How you said it.
Just checking. But the point is, like, if the probability exists out there, that has to be applied to the sort of pie. And so I think there's a better chance, sort of big picture, that McDavid wins the Conn Smythe Trophy than the Oilers actually win the Stanley Cup, because of that sort of, again, whether you think it's 1%, 10%, whatever. So I think the only bet that can be made here between now and, again, we won't have a conversation until the playoffs are underway next Tuesday. So I wanted to hijack this segment and get that out there, because I think it's a valuable thing to sort of talk about, is when these odds come out for the Conn Smythe Trophy in the couple of days leading up to the playoffs starting, do not bet on the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup, not because they can't, because Connor McDavid to win the Conn Smythe is going to be a better bet. Now, I would love for that sort of to, quote unquote, start tonight with an Oilers win, because I'm still clinging to life on a Minnesota Wild divisional future here. And so we need the Avs to lose some games. I don't have a ton of high hopes for it. So again, this is a better game to watch than it is to bet. Hopefully both teams kind of bring their A game. I don't see why they necessarily wouldn't. They're both still jockeying for position. Better game to watch than to bet, but let's go Oilers for so money. And for, honestly, Connor McDavid's Conn Smythe chances.
Okay, Matt, I have a quick question for you on this. You mentioned the Conn Smythe winners who didn't win the Stanley Cup, yet they still managed to win the Conn Smythe there. I actually agree with you in that it is actually a decent possibility that could happen if he gets there, and even if they lose in the finals to one of these Eastern Conference teams. I don't think that it could happen if he loses in the conference finals. I think it has to be to the Stanley Cup.
No, I'm
finals.
just referring to the fact that everybody was a gap at like how amazing he was for 3. And they lost in 5 games in that conference finals. And again, that just goes to show the points that he was racking up. Like, Connor McDavid's really awesome, and he had the best season of his career. So like, there's reason to believe he'll even be even better in this playoffs going forward, right? So anyway.
But so the only thing for you here on this, just to wrap up that conversation of it, the 2 guys that you mentioned, both goalies.
For sure.
Does that change any perspective for you on this? Only obviously if they get to the finals and they lose in the finals.
Sure.
Now, does that change anything for you where, like, it's not necessarily about like, okay, he doesn't deserve it, but more in terms of what the narrative could be of a player who doesn't win it? Because you can kind of have that case understood with a goalie, but like even looking at historically, okay, only the goalies have done that.
Yeah, I think it's era. The era is different, right? Like the Jaguar was a time, largely sort of a dead puck era where a guy could reel off 7 shutouts in a postseason, right? We're like, that's just not happening in this era. And so fundamentally you have to be that much better than everybody else. That's the sort of bar, right? And if there's one guy who can be that much better than everyone else, regardless of position, it's Connor McDavid, right? We, how many seasons do we have to see him just blow everybody out in an Art Ross race, or in this case, all of the counting award trophies type of a race. And so, I honestly think it's less of a chance that a goaltender can do it now, because I can't imagine a goaltender reeling off like a 5, 6, 7 shutout postseason and being the guy carrying a team. That just doesn't exist, right? Like, and that's great for hockey, and that's what's made the product a lot better, because that early 2000s product in the NHL was god awful. The late 90s, early 2000s of the Devils and the Stars. And so, part of that is the goalie could win that because no one on the Devils had like some crazy point total, right? And so, when you aren't looking at a Patrick Elias scoring 45 points, that wasn't a thing that was happening back in 2003. It's like leading the way with 23 points, I
was listening to Jamie Langenbrunner talking about that the other day. He's like, with that year we won the Stanley Cup, Elias had 59 points that season. He was the leading scorer on the team or something. It was like 59 or 60.
Like that was an era where Claude Lemieux won a Conn Smythe trophy for just being an asshole, right? And so we were just handing it out to kind of anybody for doing anything at that in that time, right? But in this case, it's who's going to be that much better than everyone else or that we could possibly imagine. And on a nightly basis, again, going back to last year, going back to this season, it's like, Connor McDavid, man, like, this is unbelievable. And again, like, played way less games than anybody on Colorado, than Nathan McKinnon, than Cale Makar, and still had more points at the end of that. Give him an extra 6 games. Like, again, he might have 60 points in the playoffs. And at that point, when the Bruins are carrying the Stanley Cup around, and like their top guy had 38, you're like, damn, man, like how are we giving it to anybody on Boston when this guy has, on a nightly basis, and you have to kind of put yourself in the sort of inertia of the playoffs and being like every night or every second night, I guess, you're going like, Connor McDavid, man, he did it again. He did it again. He did it again. And all of this is under the assumption that they have made it through the West into the Stanley Cup final, which, again, like if you don't think that they're going to make the Stanley Cup final, like go talk to So Money and he's going to be upset with that take. But like, that's fine. I'm not against the take of avoiding the Oilers altogether. Frankly, if they play the Kings in the first round and I'm looking at some sort of like plus 200 series bet on the Kings, I'm probably going to make that bet. But I'm also going to make this bet on McDavid. And I know those two things sort of they certainly are kind of counterproductive or counterintuitive. I'm going to make both of those bets and kind of be okay with what happens on either side.
Right. All right. There we go. Final game of the night here. Seattle at Vegas. You're holding on to the Dave Haxtell Coach of the Year. I think that might be dead. I'm sorry. Russ was holding it as well. But looking at this game tonight, Seattle on the road at Vegas, plus 136. Now Vegas minus 147 here. Matt, where do you kind of saw it in numbers wise relative to where the market's at in this game tonight?
Well, first of all, Connor Hartle just said he won't stand for the Elias slander in the chat. I thought we were giving credit to Elias.
Yeah, that was not slander.
Giving him leading scorer status in that playoff, or at least for the Devils, right? I could have hit you with God. There's a couple other guys that were in that mix. Who is the Sikora? I could have hit you with the Peter Sikora if you wanted me to, but I went Patrick Elias. Zach's Googling who Peter Sikora is right now.
No,
sorry, we're
talking point totals.
I would actually, look that up. I would love to know what Elias and the Devils actually did in that playoff run, because it does apply. All that is to say about Seattle and Vegas. Again, I'm with everybody else. Can't understand how Vegas is doing this. Really annoyed. I was getting phone alerts as I stood on a beach in Mexico reciting vows. I had to stop the ceremony and go, I can't believe Vegas is still doing this. And everybody got upset with me. And then we went back to everything, and everything went swimmingly afterwards, even though I got some crook eyes from the family and the wife. Don't understand how Vegas is doing this. Whatever. We'll deal with that come playoff time. I should mention that loyal listeners of the Tuesday show knew it ruined. Sorry, I was just reading the Peter Sikora ruined game 6
Yeah,
thing.
I just read that
That's so funny. I love hockey fans and just their bitterness, like 15 to 20 years later. I'm certainly absolutely one of them. As for the Seattle, the loyal listeners or viewers of the Tuesday show know that we hopped in on Jim Montgomery, still at minus 300 when it seemed like a 2-horse race. So, my bitterness towards the whole, Hackstall situation is a little bit tempered in that situation. All this is to say, like, my fair price is minus 137, plus 137. So, like, theoretically, we're getting sort of closer to a Kraken bet, but not even really all that close. And I certainly would never bet on the Golden Knights in this situation. So all this is to say, while I'm buying time for Zach to come up with the Devils from 2003, that I don't have a play on this at all.
Okay.
Connor now admits that he was 8 years old in 2008, and I no longer like Connor.
Connor says, "Add the Devils logo shaved into your head." I respect that, Connor. I
respect that part. I just don't care for the whole 8-year-old in 2008 part, which I'm sure Zach is probably as well. So screw all.
No, I was in 2008.
God, don't be
10.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank God,
okay, here
Zach's
we go.
born in the 90s. Sweet Lord.
Yes, 98.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, there you go. 15 in 2008. 15 in 2008.
Oh, okay.
8 in 2001. Yeah. Okay. 2002, 2003 New Jersey Devils. Patrick Elias, 57 points in 81 games played. He was the leading scorer on the team that year.
Yeah.
And then in the playoffs, 24 games played, he had 13 points.
So who is the leader on the Devils in that playoff? I mean, that's just outrageous.
Yeah. Yeah, that is absolutely absurd. And I mean, looking at this season that year, Langenbrunner was second on the team in regular season, 55 points. Scott Gomez, 55 points. These guys all just slotted in basically. Like,
so who led the playoffs for them? And at what? Like, who is their sort of, I mean, I guess Scott Stevens or Niedermeyer were theoretically their, like, candidate. I guess Brodeur as well. Like, who's the guy who is sitting there going, like, they gave it to the other team? I mean, I guess it's probably those three guys, but at least from a scoring standpoint.
Hold on.
Tremendous.
I thought it was Eliash. I thought it was.
It might be like
Let
from
it,
a
yeah.
from a scoring standpoint.
Trying to narrow this down.
We broke Zach. We finally.
Yeah,
It took me to the last week of the regular season, and fake requests and real requests. I finally have broken Zach, and I got to tell you, I feel really good about it. I feel really, really good about it.
This is like the one thing that I've been asked like on here live that I just like I can't find. Like I can't
know
find
we did
a
it, man.
for.
You got through the entire season, and I had to. Yeah. Why doesn't really?
I can't sort it. If anybody knows, I see Insight here saying Rafalski. I don't know if anybody knows and can confirm anything for me or even send a link. Happy to pull that up here while like we're going,
ESPN
but I can't find anything.
They'll hit you with a preseason stat from 2003, but like if you ask for a playoff stats, it's like you've gone to I don't know what.
I got to find this for the people watching right now and for you as well, Matt. But
right.
an NHL playoffs points leader. Think that might be a way to go about it.
Yeah, that should do it.
Here we go. Okay, Quant Hockey has Jamie Langenbrunner 16.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay, so Langenbrunner, according to this, NHL playoff scoring leaders 2003, Langenbrunner 16, Niedermeyer 18, Marian Gaborik 17, John Madden 16, Hossa 16, Medano 15. So there you go.
So is Niedermeyer. Niedermeyer sitting there with what, 18 points?
Langenbrunner on New Jersey, he had 18 as well. Him and Niedermeyer had 18.
Okay. So those two guys are sitting there going like, which one is it? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be Brodeur? And they're like, Jean-Sebastien Giguère. And they're like, yeah, what? And they weren't even like, they didn't even watch the Western Conference playoffs at that point. But he was legitimately insane for those those previous three series. So again, being that much better than everybody else got him that award. Whereas, it kind of would have just been anyone on the Devils that year.
All right, well, there you go. Thank you to the chat as well, firing that right when I found it. Langenbrunner 18, Langenbrunner and Niedermeyer 18. Literally, the second I pulled it up on my screen, the chat sends it. I'm like, I've got it at least pulled up here. I might as well read off the screen. But there you go. So thank you, guys. Thank you for staying here with us. Thank you for the patience of waiting along for me to find that. Now, to return the favor and to do something back for you guys, let's recap all the picks from today's show. We'll go through all of them real quick. So if you are interested in tracking all the picks, here that are given out on Connor Hartle saying all of us searching Hockey Reference at the same time. Yes. All the picks that have been given out on throughout the course of the show, throughout the entire season, as we are now down to the final week of regular season. You can find all those here on the Edgework Bet Stamp account. You can find that in the Find Better section as Edgework HQ. Fortunately, the picks are locked until game time, so you have to wait until the games start to be able to see the ones that are in progress. But that is obviously because we would like you to come over and watch the show instead and support the show. So that is the way to do that and get all the picks ahead of the games, but to recap them all here so that we can make sure that we have them ahead of time. Buffalo at New Jersey, starting there, we got Dawson Mercer over 1.5 shots on goal, minus 165. These are all a full unit play, by the way, so unless otherwise specified, these are all a full unit play. Dawson Mercer over 1.5 shots on goal, minus 165. Now we go to the Tampa-Toronto game. We are taking the Tampa Bay Lightning money line minus 139. That is the Lightning money line minus 139. Then we are going to go for Michael Bunting over 2.5 shots on goal plus 108. Michael Bunting over 2.5 shots on goal plus 108. Moving on to Chicago-Pittsburgh, we are taking the Chicago Blackhawks in one of the least surprising events of the day. Blackhawks plus 429 on the money line here. That is the Chicago Blackhawks plus 429 on the money line against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Matt, you have any thoughts on that one?
I just love that you're like, and one of the least surprising things of the day, a plus 429 underdog that again is probably going to lose. Let's just move on.
Makes sense. Like numbers wise, it makes sense. I get it. I understand. Now we got Winnipeg, Minnesota. We are taking the Minnesota Wild money line -111 against the Winnipeg Jets tonight. That is the Minnesota Wild -111 money line against the Winnipeg Jets. And finally, we have the Vancouver Canucks money line in regulation +106 against the Anaheim Ducks. That is Canucks money line in regulation against the Anaheim Ducks +106. So there you go. Those are all the bets here for tonight. And as Connor Hartle saying, come for the bets, stay for the early 2000s Devils talk. So there you go. I'm glad we
and
could
stay
scratch that
longer
itch
for
you,
the
Connor.
team Googling efforts.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone helping out. Just unfortunate that you found it at the exact same time that I did while I was scrambling in the back searching. But thank you guys for sticking around. Matt, glad to have you back. Hopefully you enjoyed your 2 weeks off, but it is nice to have you back here throwing plus 429s out at me, and we'll be laughing away when I go and turn around and bet Chicago -1.5 later, and don't tell anybody about it. And I'll screenshotting, sending it to you, but. Thank you for your insight today, the analysis. Appreciate it as always. Look forward to doing some playoff previews with you and some playoff picks and daily shows as the playoffs get underway starting next week. So excited for that. And to everyone who stayed here throughout the course of the show, to anybody who popped in at any point here today, thank you for hopping in. Thank you for staying along. We look forward to seeing everyone back here tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time for more picks and previews. Good luck on your bets tonight.